All right, my name is Kathleen Moore, and I'm here with Mr. Leday, my principal from Watson MST in Garland, Texas. He's going to talk to us today about our schedule, our master schedule from kindergarten all the way up to fifth grade. So thank you very much, Mr. Leday, for taking time out of your schedule to go over our schedule here at Watson.
My pleasure. My pleasure to do so. I want to also add that I've also done master schedule for grades 9 through 12. So any questions, anything that you give me, I'll give you both the K through 5 answer as well as the 9 through 12 answer.
Wonderful, even better.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the big things is how do you decide who gets allocated time for specials time? And in elementary, I know we have a lot of confusion between specials and computer times and all of those things. So what is how do you start that process with the scheduling?
Okay. Ironically, you have to look at things that can't necessarily move first.
Okay.
So one of the things or one of the areas that's kind of tough, specific in the elementary schedule, is you've got to look at lunch.
Okay, lunchtime. Okay.
These are critical things that can't move much because you have to make sure they're accounted for.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the things that you build in the schedule first. So, for example, in looking at this past year's schedule, we were trying to focus in on a specific research component that indicated that recess needed to come before lunch and that it would help optimize student performance. So, because of that, you have to have the lunches late enough where you could start recess and not be in recess, not start at 9 o'clock in the morning. But also you have to make sure that lunch is ended in enough time to accommodate the needs of the cafeteria workers who have to be gone from the campus by 2 p.m.
Okay.
So those are little things that they have to start by a certain time in the morning. They have to end by a certain time in the morning because as contract employees, they have specific timelines that they have to work within.
Okay.
So what we did was we created the lunch schedule. We created the recess schedule. And then what we looked at is around that, where are the individuals for recess and lunch? That also gave us the ability to build our conference period schedule, which is actually the specials. But we have to make sure that the specials teachers also need a conference period.
Okay.
So what we did was we looked at the fact that fourth grade and fifth grade, normally what we were trying to do is find everybody a 2-hour block of time somewhere in the course of the day. It's another scheduling concern, because we were given a directive by the school district that there need to be 2 hours uninterrupted of time for ELA. But that's very difficult to do when you have 6 different grade levels. You have people pulling for intervention. You have people pulling for special education. You have bilingual classes that run on a slightly different schedule even than their counterparts in the same grade level. And so we had to make it flexible enough for us to be able to meet all the needs of taking care of the number of times that people have PE, have music, have library time, have art, while at the same time dealing with the intervention needs and all the special population needs that come along with our itinerant teachers. Mm-hmm. So again, we built from the things that have to be there first, which are the lunches. Recess is required by law, 30 minutes a day. And so you have to make sure that those things are built into the schedule. From there, it's a mix and match of where we might place things. Okay. What we've done with the order of the lunches is we've gone kindergarten through fifth grade, where each class or each grade level would have the next successive lunch. We thought about the fact that, for example, that we had to stagger K, 1, and 2, because K starts at 10:30. First grade starts at 10:40. And second grade actually starts at 11 o'clock, which means that there's some overlap. But that was built in that way because we wanted to make sure that the fifth graders would not eat after 1 o'clock.
Okay.
And so, again, there's all those different things that you have to kind of take a look at when you're building the schedule. If you were talking about a 9 through 12 schedule, what you have to look at is that there's specific classes that kids go into that you want every member of that program to be able to be in that program. So, for example, you'll look at your AP classes. You'll look at your large classes like athletics or band or choir, your specials classes that can only meet once a day or twice a day. And you try and make sure the schedule is set up such that those individuals, every one of them that signed up for it, can get it.
Oh, I see. Okay, that's great to know. I do have a question about okay, so you mentioned the intervention and you mentioned district initiatives. So when you're building a schedule, how do you know, like if the district is saying we need to have these 2 hours for ELA, but the schedule literally doesn't have the minutes, like where do you know how to bend on that? Because as going into principalship, I know that's one thing that kind of stresses me out, because from the teacher standpoint, I know it's frustrating sometimes, and I know how to make that work as a teacher, but I don't know that all teachers really have that flexibility in their mind of how do I make the minutes work. So from the administrator's perspective, how do you decide or communicate that with your teachers? Like, here's how to make this work.
Right. Well, the biggest thing is, first, it starts from your communication with your central administrators. I have to ask the question of which things are preferred and which things are required. Mm-hmm. And so, for example, the 2 hours uninterrupted ELAR instruction for kindergarten through fifth grade campuses, that is a preference.
Mm-hmm. Not a requirement.
And not necessarily a requirement, especially given some of the other components of what we needed to do with regard to our schedule. With us being a magnet campus, there are certain course offerings with STEAM School, with the field trip protocols that we have. All these different things impact how much time you can put people in certain classes.
Okay.
In addition to that, if you notice at the beginning of this year, we had some questions about choir and how it would work with the schedule.
Yes.
You'll find that my role and my philosophy is a distributive leadership model, where I like for people who are involved or closest to the issue to be a part of the problem-solving process. And so what we did was we had the music teacher, the specialist lead, and then the lead teachers for 4th and 5th grade sit down. And they came up with a compromise that worked for enough for everyone to get it accomplished. So being a principal, you have to understand when you need to step in and take control and do this and make the decisions for yourself, or when you need to allow other people who have expertise in the same area to come in and help. Again, I lean mostly towards distributive leadership of having other people be involved in the process, and so that we can problem solve together, because no one person can figure it all out.
Okay. Yes, and I'm learning that part of distributed leadership, because as I'm planning the garden schedule for our garden day, I'm learning that that's something we definitely need to make sure that I take on with other teachers, so they can give me feedback to let me know, like, oh, this is actually not going to work for our kindergartners, which Ms. Todd let me know, hey, Ms. Moore, you put an 8 o'clock start time. You might need to push that to 8:20, because just managing that. Right. And so I said, you're right. I thought I had changed it, but I changed it so many times I forgot what I left off with. So that is something that I'm glad you gave me that feedback right off the bat, to say, hey, get people involved, have them look it over, because sometimes they think of things that you don't think of, and they can help you with tweaking that schedule. So I get that. I like that.
And in addition, keep this in mind that, again, there's always going to be some things that other people know that you don't. There's no way that you can actually, as a master scheduler, know every single component of every single thing. So the best thing you can do is you can ask questions, be humble and mindful in your approach. You are not the almighty master scheduler. Yes. You do not control all life, space, and time.
Yes.
What you do is you are trying your best to make sure that every kid gets as many of the offerings as possible.
Yes.
As long as that's your mindset on it, you'll be fine.
Yes, and can you tell for our video, because I feel like our campus is unique at our elementary because of our STEAM school. So one of the things at our campus is we offer these elective courses, which takes place 3 times a year, and it's about 45 minutes, I believe, 50 minutes of our instruction time. But it enhances all the skills that we're already teaching. So that's something unique to us. So when you were looking at that for Watson, since this is your first year here at Watson, what kinds of thoughts you had in mind, or is there anything that kind of was like, oh man, how do we make this work?
Well, I think the biggest thing for me is that, ironically, not only being my first year here as a principal, and I'm also a parent of Watson Wildcats. So I have the benefit of understanding from the parent perspective what the impact is of STEAM school, and how allowing students to take an interest in things and be hands-on, with some of the possible career pathways that they have. It's pretty inspiring. Also, for me, it focuses on post-secondary readiness, which I'm a really big fan of, being that I spent so many years in secondary school.
Yes.
So students having the opportunity to experience some of those things as early as kindergarten, 1st, 2nd grade helps us be able to guide them on a track. In addition, we can use those as PBLs. And when we do instruction in the classroom, the whole notion of being able to say, well, remember, it was like when you were in STEAM school, you did this.
Yes.
We can connect future learning to prior learning or prior experience that took place during STEAM symposium or STEAM school. So
Yes.
those are the kinds of things that are very valuable to me
Okay,
as a
great.
leader.
What staff or personnel are needed for our classes?
A lot more than we have. Well, the most important things are this. For K through 5, we've got to have one teacher per 22 by law.
Okay.
In grades K through 4. So it's important that we know that you cannot exceed the cap of 22 in 4th grade.
Yes.
But for this reason, in 5th grade, there is no cap.
Yes.
And so if you notice, the 5th grade classes are significantly larger.
Yes.
However, the objective is still to not overburden or overtax those classes.
Yes.
So whereas a 5th grade class may be, say, 26 kids, you don't want it to go to 30.
Mm-hmm.
That is not good use of resources. That is not effective. All the teaching and learning research indicates that that's a very bad idea.
Yes.
And so because of that, we've got to be mindful of it. But as a district, the district gives you an artificial cap of what they believe you can handle or accommodate on your campus.
Okay.
So they may give us a cap that indicates that we can handle, say, 135 students in 5th grade. But in reality, I recognize that, having 27 kids per class is a bit of a burden.
Yes.
And
we
so,
have 27 and 26 in our rotation.
Exactly.
So it does make a difference. Those extra 7 kids. Last year I had 21 in 5th grade. So those two, from last year to this year, as a 5th grade teacher, I can feel that difference of those extra 6 kids.
Right. And in addition, for us as a campus, the vast majority of our new students are 5th graders that are new to the campus, that are not kindergarten, are in 5th grade. So their first year at Watson MST is as 5th graders after having developed all the habits, rituals, and background from K through 4.
Yes.
So again, there's an interesting process when you build that schedule, and actually when you decide which personnel you're going to use for 5th grade. They have to be people who are able to push the kids up for the middle school and prepare them. But they also have to be extremely patient because, again, that's the largest number of transfers that we have for our campus because of our magnet school. So you got to be very strategic in who you place where.
Okay. Is there a way that the district decides that there's this many kids that we're going to go ahead and add a section, assuming you had space? I know here at Watson, there's no place for us to add a section. But if we were a campus that had, what is that cap number that they're like, if you're in a K4 classroom, obviously we're at 22. Actually, 5th grade would be my question because that's the only one that doesn't really have a cap. But if you know that you're sitting with 3 sections and they all have 27, you have more people wanting to come to your campus and you have the extra classroom, what's the magic? Is there a magic number in the district that says let's add a section of 5th grade to it?
Every campus has what's called a capacity for every grade level or for every group of either grade level or course in secondary level. And so what we're looking at is what is the capacity of the grade level that we've been given artificially from the district. Now, kindergarten through 4th grade, the cap is 22. So if we get to a place where we have, let's say you had 45 kids, then that is 3 sections.
Because of that one kid that's over.
Because of that one kid. It's 3 sections. Or it's 2 sections and 1 kid on a waiting list. Okay, to where that kid get in. So what we do is we set the number of classes based on, the allocation units that we get in terms of teachers that we have that are able to do the project, that are assigned to our campus. Once we get that allocation, then for K through 4th grade, those are the only slots we have. So, for example, right now we have a waiting list of 15 kids for the 3rd grade. Okay. We've reached our cap. Yeah. We have 110 in that grade level, including the bilingual class. And we got 15 kids who want to get in, but they can't because there's nowhere for them to sit. Okay. Now, that's the case because we have magnet seats and we have non-magnet seats. Yes. And by how our school is constructed, it is actually 75% of all the seats go to magnet students. Okay. 25% go to non-magnet.
Okay, I didn't know those numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And I know Garland ISD is unique in that we allow our kids to choose their school, unlike all the other schools in Texas that have to be neighborhood seats. So they have to go to the school that's their closest neighborhood spot. So I know that that's quite different from everybody else. And I think that's what keeps me in Garland, because I like that from the parent standpoint, options and being able to choose which campus we get to go to. So I know the numbers has always kind of I've always asked that question to my previous administrator too, like how do you determine that? Because when I was at a previous campus at Stedham, we did have spots, and sometimes it would be, are we getting another section or are we not in 5th grade, because of the fact that we would have so many that signed up to be, Stedham was their first choice. And so I wondered, like, well, what's that magic number that makes that next section? Or but I guess it just depends on how many.
There's what's called a staffing calculator that Human Resources uses to determine how many units actually get allocated. And by units, we mean how many full-time teacher equivalencies are being assigned to campus. So let me give you a perfect example. Your position is an FTE, a full-time equivalency unit.
Okay.
We may have itinerant teachers like our instructional coaches, all those different folks who are assigned to us for 2 days out of the week. So they're 0.4 FTE. So when they're doing the calculations of which teachers are there, we're doing it based upon the number of days that people are literally in the building.
Oh, okay.
There are some campuses, for example, who have to share a teacher. So half a day the teacher's in one spot, half a day the teacher's in another spot.
Okay, like the specials teachers. I've seen that before too, like the music teacher or art teachers being shared among 2 campuses. Okay.
And so then that way they would left them as a half-time teacher unit, so 0.5 for their FTE. Okay. So like I said, those are different types of things that you have to be considerate of when you're talking about building. And then finally, every campus has a physical cap of the number of students it can have.
Okay.
So for example, our cap is 607 students. Why 7? I don't know.
Okay.
I just know that's the cap. We have 584 kids on the campus. Okay, but we're full in several grade levels, even though it says that we have more room. Okay, and you've walked around the place. I don't know that I see too much room. We're busting at
the seams, yeah.
We are very much so. And ironically, one of the things that's unique and that I didn't notice about our campus until this past weekend is we're the largest magnet elementary by population in the district.
Okay.
And there are, I think it's 7 or 8 magnet schools. And we're the 10th largest school in our district on population out of the 42 elementary schools.
Wow. I didn't realize that either. But it does make sense because I feel like just in last year, I feel it.
Yeah,
you feel it in the halls,
yes,
in transitions and not dismissal times.
Right. So. And the fact of the matter is our school building was built in 1962.
Yes, it's very,
and so it's a bit antiquated. And, and that's the reason why we have the spacing issues that we do and the traffic issues that we do, because we're landlocked as well.
Yes, that's very true. I know on our campus, one of the questions I have to ask in the reflection talks about teacher collaboration. And we do have that 1 day a week that we're meeting as a team. And you even give us days where we're able to collaborate. So from the teacher standpoint, thank you for that. How do you, I know that I feel like our campus here allocates money for that specifically, but I feel like that's not the case for all campuses. So if I were to go to a campus that maybe didn't have the funds available for that, how do you go about the process of that? To, like, who do you speak to? Is it your upper management where you kind of have to cheerlead and say, my teachers need these times to plan so that they can have that collaboration piece? Because I felt like that's something Watson had and had put money towards last year, because I know, like, in budget's its own little animal, I'm sure. But
we'll talk about that on the next video.
Yes. But going in as a principal, how do you start that process of having that availability for your, like, do you talk to your region director, or how do you start that process?
Every district is different. Even different directors or different supervisors.
Area directors, thank you. That's what I was trying to
do. We'll have a different way. Well, but for some districts, principals report directly to an assistant superintendent, or even sometimes a superintendent if there's no assistant and it's a very small district. So what I will tell you is that the process for us is understand that anytime you do a budget, your budget is not really about money. It's about where you spend your money indicates your priorities.
Okay.
So if you want to know what someone's really about, don't ask them out of their mouths. Look at their budget.
Okay.
Because where you spend your money is what you value.
Yeah.
Because
No, and I really do think that
because
too.
literally you put your money
where
you value it.
Mm-hmm.
In our particular case, one of the things that I've been focused on this year is trying to improve our instructional alignment. And so the schedule has to be set up that way to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
The resources that you get have to be set up that way in order to be able to accomplish it. So if we are talking about scheduling things, we're going to talk about making sure that the schedule is such that you will be able to meet all your requirements with regard to conference time.
Mm-hmm.
450 minutes every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Okay? By law. So the schedule was built for you to be able to have 500 minutes every 2 weeks. So that when I ask you for 50 minutes,
it's not
a violation of the law. So you build a schedule with your priorities of being able to accomplish the tasks that you need to accomplish with your team. I realized that with having the PLCs during the school day, it's much more likely to happen for a couple of reasons. One, you're already here,
mm-hmm.
and the time has been allocated for you. Two, I can go in.
Yeah.
I know exactly where it's taking place, and I can be a part of helping, working with you. And the third thing is this. When you have a finite set of time that you're doing something, as opposed to if you have a PLC after school,
mm-hmm.
you don't waste it.
Mm-hmm.
You get in, you get it done, you get it gone. And that's the reason why the fourth thing is most important is that if you have a protocol or an agenda for them,
yes,
you can stay focused. So that's the reason why, the PLC teams here have received the script of our data analysis meeting
mm-hmm.
so that we can follow it. It's timed out to 45 minutes, even though the conference period is 50, because sometimes people have to walk kids down the hallway,
mm-hmm.
have to use the restroom, got to stop and get some water, all those different things so that we can make sure that we get done finishing in no time.
Okay. Yeah, that's good. Well, you've answered a lot of my questions. I know our meeting's supposed to be 35 minutes, so let me think of some more questions that I have for you. I think there was one more I highlighted.
Let me give you a little bit of insight, though, as far as you asked the question about how do you procure that money, because I can tell you what we did for this campus, and I can tell you what I did as an assistant principal on a high school campus.
Okay, great.
The way we did it on the high school campus where I was located is we would petition for a certain number of days off the campus where we could plan the whole day.
Okay.
So when I ran an Algebra 1 PLC, what we did was we planned one day in the fall, one day in the spring, and what we did was we calendarized our semester.
Okay.
Didn't have formal lesson plans. It was more of an instructional planning calendar model. But we started to talk about where are we going, where are we headed,
mm-hmm.
how are we trying to get there,
mm-hmm.
and then what do we know, how do we know that we've actually achieved that goal?
Yes.
Okay. If we don't start with that end in mind about where we're trying to go,
where are we going?
You're going to be very confused throughout the entire year about how you know how you're doing. Okay? You can be far more strategic.
Achievement.
You can be far more strategic
mm-hmm.
if you know, okay, by this time we're going to be here. By this time we're going to be here. By this time we're going to be here.
Mm-hmm.
Now, does that mean it'll go exactly as planned? No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. But
you have a goal in mind.
What it does mean is you have a framework to work with that you know where you're trying to get to.
Mm-hmm.
And the key for you is by the end of the year, get all the things accomplished that you've identified that specifically must be done.
Okay. Yeah. I was going to ask you something. I forgot what it was. Sorry.
It's okay.
So you allocated the day in the fall. I like what you said about you have helping our campus try to align to with the just, K-5 being aligned in math or reading or social mm-hmm. studies. Are you planning in some of our PLCs that we're doing after school, are we going to be doing some specific content? And I know you sent an email out about people that want to teach, or maybe it was Ms. Goodwin, our assistant principal, but mm-hmm. I love that we're trying to do that on campus. Are you going to allow the teachers to kind of do that leadership role where they're planning and you're stepping in and letting them know? Or when do you know when to step in and say, okay, here's what you have planned, but mm-hmm. How do you go about that brainstorming process? Because I feel like as a new administrator whenever I decide to go into this job, that's something I would worry about is allowing that freedom for them to really teach, but then also being like, okay, we're giving a day for this, but I really don't feel like your presentation. Like, how do you go about with that process?
What it boils down to for me is this. This is my first year as a principal. So you have to understand that my theories are raw and untested.
Okay.
But in my 11 years experience as an assistant principal, how I've always worked is I have to find out what you know and are able to do first.
Yes.
Before I can decide what the length is with regard to how far you can go.
Okay.
So what I do is I try to make sure to, first of all, build relationships right off the very beginning. Mm-hmm. So that's my number one focus, is getting to know each one of my teachers, identifying strengths, identifying limitations, identifying growth areas that they seek and growth areas that I see for them.
Okay.
And then from there, it is aligning those individuals, their strengths, give them a chance to be out front with their peers and show them what they do. Because what I've come to realize is that you can learn more from your peers showing it to you than an outside contractor coming in to tell you. Because what you're going to first say with them is, they don't know our kids. They don't know me. They don't understand how it works here at Watson, etc. Mm-hmm. But when your own come to the door and say, listen, guys, this is what I've done that works, it has more credibility. And there's a greater chance for it to actually be implemented. Okay. So what I'm in the process of now is this. If you notice the PD schedule that we have, I sent out a survey the very first day. Mm-hmm. After the very first day of staff development, it said, how's my driving? And I asked you what topics
you
feel like need to be covered.
Yes.
And that was because before I got here, I didn't know. So as we built the PD schedule, we built it based upon the stuff that you said there. Okay. The plan for this next year is for there to actually be a PD committee. Okay. And that PD committee will sit down. They'll start in March, and by May, we'll have a PD calendar for the 2020-21 school year. But it'll be developed by the teachers. Okay. Because they know what they need and they know what they want. Okay. As an administrator and as a principal, my job is to make sure to be there every step of the way, because if there are things that I see that we need to add, I need to be a part of that committee. Yes. But I don't necessarily need to be over it. Okay. Okay. That's a wonderful leadership opportunity for those who are looking for instructional management or instructional facilitator positions, for example. It's a great position for someone who is aspiring to be an assistant principal or principal, for them to be able to take some ownership of some things. I'm all about allowing other people to lead in whatever capacity that they can. Yeah. That's part of the reason why I invited you to come on the walkthroughs, because that's a leadership opportunity for you to be able to see instructional leadership, what it looks like. Okay. You'll be a part of the walkthrough process. You'll be a part of troubleshooting and analyzing, what's working, what's not working, what's consistent with what we're doing at Watson, what's inconsistent with what we're doing at Watson. Okay. And so the objective for me is to make sure that every single person who wants to grow gets connected to that. Okay. That's how we'll develop that PD. Okay. And ironically, them being in charge of PD is PD.
Yes. That's going to be helpful. Mm-hmm. I think that's something that sometimes elementary, we wear lots of hats, and I feel like we do, sometimes it feels like elementary does more work than the secondary does on some pieces, and it's not like followed through. So I'm really looking forward to seeing that PD, that walkthrough, because I want to hear what those secondary teachers or principals are saying, or what they're saying they don't see from our elementary kids coming up. Right. So I'm looking forward to that.
And like I said, it's a different world, 9-12 versus K through 5. Yeah. But I think you'll be amazed at some of the similarities. Yes. Ironically, the best teachers in elementary, in my opinion, can teach in secondary. Yeah. They just don't have the desire.
Yeah, I agree with that, because I do feel like it is.
And the same for the folks in secondary. Yes. Because what you'll find is the most highly successful secondary teachers do the things that elementary teachers do regularly. Mm-hmm. And the most highly successful elementary teachers, and I'll just lay it out this way. The most highly successful secondary teachers build relationships the same way that elementary teachers do as a whole, better. Mm-hmm. The most successful elementary teachers do what most secondary teachers do better than elementary teachers, which is the data analysis and tracking of individual students. Yeah. So if I had to name anything for our campus that we need to focus on so we can make sure to improve instruction. It's the data analysis and specifically the tracking of individual students setting performance goals for each kid.
Yes, I agree with that completely.
That's where there's a lack.
Yeah, no, I agree with that because coming from another campus and coming here to Watson last year, I tried a few times to try to talk that process through, but it's very difficult when there's one on the team that knows it and they're trying to teach their team, but not everybody's like on board with doing it because there's not a higher up administration saying, no, this is what we're doing. Like, I feel like sometimes it's an expectation, and it's an assumption that people know how to do it too, and that they don't all know how to do it. So then you have that one on the grade level that knows how to do it, but not everybody. So it's like that scaffold approach of.
But that connects to scheduling too, because again, when you select people for teams, you have to be very strategic about what skill set you're putting together.
Yes.
Okay. So, for example, the team that you're on right now, your idea of data analysis is actually consistent with another person on your team. Now, because I've done coaching sessions with them, I know exactly who that is. Yeah. And so after we turn this video off, I'm going to tell you exactly who you need to get with.
Yes.
That will be your cohort to help build the data component for your team.
Yes.
And in that way, get
pretty sure she's my partner.
Yeah, she is. She is.
Because she came from another campus too. And so we have that aligned where that was the expectation. Right. So I think that's a piece of it. And the others, they do know some parts of it. They just don't know. I think that they haven't been exposed to all of the tracking that maybe my co-teacher and myself have had that. So.
And that, again, as a scheduler, you got to look at personalities.
Yes.
You got to look at fit. You got to look at their temperament.
Yes.
You've got to make sure, even when you're cohorting teachers to partner them up, that there is, a complement to one another. Because if they're both the exact same, then they're going to drive kids nuts. If they're complete polar opposites, you're going to have kids confused. So you got to make sure that they coordinate with each other. They're fairly equivalent, even though they have different personalities.
Okay. I know this is your first year being on elementary, but do you think there's with what your background knowledge is, do you feel like departmentalized is better than being self-contained, or do you have a preference?
It depends on the grade level, because here's what you don't know about me. I've taught an 8th grade self-contained class before.
Oh my goodness, self-contained in 8th grade.
Yes, I taught Algebra 1, pre-algebra, English, U.S. history, the science was earth science, and then I also taught Spanish 1 to that group. Okay.
Oh my goodness.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. So what I give you that to say that I've had the experience of teaching a self-contained class at a secondary level.
Okay.
I think that developmentally, to prepare them for middle school, is better to departmentalize, only because that's what they'll get in middle school.
Okay.
Not because it's a better teaching arrangement. But the other thing is, too, there's one more advantage to specialization in elementary school. Delivering me from the math teacher that says that the alligator eats the big number, and that's why you do a less than or greater than symbol. I had to point out to a teacher the other day that the reason why less than is pointed the way it is because this number is to the left of that number on the number line. Greater than is to the right of the number on the left.
Yes, because you see that secondary perspective and you're trying to teach them the long-term math, having that foundation.
Right.
Correct.
Well, I mean, I used to teach a class as a professor, as an adjunct professor, how to teach math developmentally for K through 7.
Okay.
And that actually is the concept that connects kids back to the number line.
Yes.
Not necessarily. It's all number theory. And it's actually an elementary concept. But because people aren't digging deep enough into it, because they're not math people. I'm not a math person. I've never been good at math. First of all, I'll never say that to a kid, because they'll repeat it. But then the second thing is that because there's not that investment in the content as much as they are in reading and language skills.
Because that's what they prefer.
Because that's what they prefer. The vast majority of elementary teachers are language specialists.
Oh, okay.
The vast majority. Then what ends up happening is, and those kids go to advanced grade levels, with no departmentalization, they don't get exposed to the same level of foundational concepts and content as they would in English. So you'll see their English scores be better. Math scores not so much. That's the reason why the state of Texas has the English standard as a higher standard in math and science.
Oh, I did not know that.
Okay, give you a perfect example. EOCs, starting of course exams for ninth graders. English 1, Algebra 1, Biology. The passing standard as it approaches for ELA is 62%.
Okay.
The passing standard for Algebra 1 is 39.
Oh,
The passing
wow.
standard for Biology is 38.
Oh, my
The
goodness.
passing standard for U.S. History is 40.
That's interesting. That's good to know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Let that wash over you.
Yeah.
There you go.
All right. Well, thank you so much
You're
for
very
spending
welcome.
some time today to go over the schedule. I have not been over in the camera the whole time, but you've heard my voice the whole time. So thank you very much, Mr. Leday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
If I can figure out how to